शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवरभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाख्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यो मामजमनादिं च वेत्ति लोकमहेश्वरम् असम्मूढः समर्थ्येषु सर्वपापैः प्रमुच्यते। एतां विभूतिं योगं च मम यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः सोऽविकम्पेन योगेन युज्यते नात्र संशयः। तेषां सततयुक्तानां भजतां प्रीतिपूर्वकं ददामि बुद्धियोगं तं येन मामुपयान्ति ते। तेषामेवानुकम्पार्थम् अहमज्ञानजं तमः नाशयाम्यात्मभावस्थो ज्ञानदीपेन भास्वता। हन्त ते कथयिष्यामि दिव्या ह्यात्मविभूतयः प्राधान्यतः कुरु श्रेष्ठ नास्त्यन्तो विस्तरस्य मे। अहमात्मा गुडाकेश सर्वभूताशयस्थितः अहमादिश्च मध्यं च भूतानामन्त एव च सर्गाणामादिरन्तश्च मध्यं चैवाहमर्जुन। अध्यात्मविद्या विद्यानां वादः प्रवदतामहं यच्चापि सर्वभूतानां बीजं तदहमर्जुन न तदस्ति विना यत्स्यान् मया भूतं चराचरं नान्तोऽस्ति मम दिव्यानां विभूतीनां परन्तप एष तूद्देशतः प्रोक्तो विभूतेर्विस्तरो मया यद्यद् विभूतिमस्तत्मत्सत्त्वं श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा तद्देवावगच्छत्वं मम तेजोंश सम्भवम्.
Very nice. Thank you, Rakesh. Hello, everyone. Namaste. If you can turn on your video, please do. Very nice. Thank you. So we are chapter 13. Right?
Yes, Professor. Finished 26, I guess.
26. Yeah, so last time there was this nice summary where in about, I think we covered 23 onwards, right? 3 verses, but
Yes,
they were
Professor.
powerful. Yeah, very powerful. First one, Bhagavan says, Ya evam vetti purusham prakritim cha gunais saha. Whoso knows thus the spirit and his power together with the gunas, constituents, is no more born, no matter how he fares in the world. So this is a beautiful assurance, right? Whoever knows Purusha and Prakriti and the gunas is no more born. It's a very powerful assurance. It is your ticket stamped by Bhagavan himself. So it is valid at all places and all times. That's very beautiful, right? It is good to have some firm things in the world which is so uncertain and changing, right? Nothing is certain from one day to the next, but these are certain points. Correct? I think that's very nice. I don't know about you. It is good to have some certainty in the world. So, very jolly, very delightful. I'm glad to see the smiles. Very good, very good. Then, 24, Bhagavan says, some perceive the self, though this was one more of those beautiful ones where Atma is used in different contexts and in different vibhaktis. And by the context of the vibhakti, one can get the meaning. Some perceive the self with a capital S, in and by the self, little s, by means of meditation, dhyanena. And others by the yoga of Sankhya, which we discussed in chapter 2, and others by means of Karma Yoga. And then 25, which also highly inspiring, and again giving us confidence and strength. Anye tu eva evam ajanantah, and some, however, not knowing thus, shrutva anyebhya upasate, hear from others about the self and worship. Te api, they also, cha atitaranti eva mrityum, they also overcome death indeed. And what is their characteristic? Shruti parayanaha, intent on hearing. So hearing is highly lauded, hearing about the truth and performing the worships according to upasanas, according to instructions obtained by those who know. So hearing about the self and worshipping, they also cross. So again, very good. Finally, 26. Yavat sanjayate kinchit. Whatever being is born, sattvam. And here I interpreted that as sentient. Sthavara jangamam. Either moving or unmoving. Kshetra kshetrajya samyogat know it to be due to the union of the field and the field knower. Tad vidhi. Know that. Bharatarshava. O best of the Bharatas. O bull among the Bharatas. Shabha. Acha. Any questions so far on what we discussed before we move on to 27? So these are just wonderful assurances, right? By the way, Mahesh, the alankaram in your puja space is most beautiful and attractive.
Thank you.
Huh.
It's the same as last time you visited.
Oh, yes, yes. I must have forgotten. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, 2 years back. Yeah.
Right. So, these verses very beautiful. Would you agree? Jolly. And so, should we move on? 27.
Dr. Shankar, so
Yes.
I have a question about the six. So, what is here? It is being alluded that anything born, let's say, so in this bhuloka,
Mm-hmm.
either moving or unmoving.
Mm-hmm.
So that is due to it says due to the field of field knower and field, right? So basically, so the field is Brahman, right? Mommy. Then so the Prakriti and Purusa, it's alluding to that, or maybe it's a little bit simplified. Mommy.
Right.
It ends here.
So, what do you remember about Kshetra? What is Kshetra? Quiz for everybody. What is the Kshetra? What is the field?
So the field is the Brahman, right? Where things are done like we have this drama, like a cinema.
What did Bhagavan say is Kshetra?
Kshetra is the body and the bird. Kshetra is who knows the body and the bird.
In the beginning, Bhagavan said, Idam Shariram is Kshetra. Correct. Right? This body. But not just the body. He said then, also the mind.
Char and Achar.
He said Man, Buddhi, Ahankar, and the 10
Yes.
senses.
All the faculties of the mind, senses, everything. Correct? So that means for us, if we take ourselves, first we can say, okay, body is a kshetra, is a field, right? And field gives birth to, you can sow things in it and some things will grow in it, right? That interpretation of field is also. Then the idea is kshetrajna, the one who is aware. So what is the thing that we know which is beyond the body and the senses and the mind and the buddhi, right? So in a way, Bhagavan is indicating that one needs to know this Kshetrajna, because later he says, right, Jnanam Gyayam Jnanagamyam. In other words, in the state of nescience or ignorance, we actually don't know who the field knower is, to be honest. Correct? We have a sense, logically and intellectually, that a field knower must exist. After all, if we can objectify all the things in the Kshetra, including the mind, the buddhi, then they cannot be I. Anything that can be an object cannot be a subject. The subject is different from the object. The moment I can objectify anything, that cannot be me, truly, the true self. And so therefore, Bhagavan has given this distinction. So he said, first of all, he said, this knowledge is the most important knowledge, right? All other knowledge is subservient. So then he says, okay, Kshetra, these are the things that he has given definition as Kshetra. Okay, I can, by meditation, so first of all, body I know, right? Body is Kshetra. Everybody knows the body. Next, in our Taittiriya Upanishad Panchakosha theory, we say prana, pranamaya kosha. So we can try to know the pranas. They are also objects of the mind. The pranas, fivefold in number, but you can count 10 also. But in the end, boil it down to one prana appearing as those, right? Life force, energy, however you want to call it. Then deeper into that is the mind, manomaya, the sphere of the mind. So there we know this, we can meditate on the senses in their various forms. And then we have gross form of senses, sense objects, subtle form of the senses. And these meditations are prescribed in Yoga Sutra. Systematically, we are supposed to meditate on these things, progressively drawing inward, right? Remember the stage of pratyahara is actually very strongly connected to meditation on the senses. Only then we will gain the ability to conquer them, right? Then manomaya kosha, then mind, importer and exporter of sensations. Then now this manomaya kosha itself is conquered from the vantage point of vijnanamaya kosha, I said, the buddhi. Sattvic buddhi is what enables us to perceive all these things, right? Then when sattvic buddhi turns inward, then there is the sheath of bliss, anandamaya kosha, right? Great joy is experienced, bliss in meditation. Then deeper than that meditational bliss is the self, the true self. Its very nature is bliss. That's why we say Satchidananda, right? Nature of pure awareness, consciousness, Sat, and truly the ground of all being, and Anand, we say. Satchidananda Swarupam. Okay. Now, and Bhagavan is saying, this Kshetrajna is the person to be known. Huh? Okay. Now he is saying, whatever is born. So you see, when we take any sentient being, let us take first human beings. We know them, belonging to that class, right? So all sentient beings. So then he shifted a little bit gears and said, there is Prakriti and Purusha. And in a way, the point of bringing in Prakriti and Purusha was to show that all this Kshetrajna is truly composed of the gunas, right? Because remember, we have said even the mind is composed of gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. We have talked all the way up to sattvic buddhi, which I talked about, is all composed of gunas, right? So all those sheaths are nothing but Prakriti. You agree? So I'm connecting it to the Panchakosha theory. Now something peculiar happens. This is now we are getting into Sankhya theory. I told you Sankhya theory is dualistic in a sense that it conceives of two concepts, Purusha and Prakriti. Correct? And in the end, we will see they both dissolve to the same. But it is still very useful. It's a very useful concept on the way, in the journey. So now we know this Prakriti is all this other stuff. So then how does Purusha get entangled in Prakriti? Why does Purusha? Because he says the one who experiences the joys and sorrows, pleasure, pain, all the dualities is Purusha in some form, right? Okay. And he says this Purusha is the one entangled in the gunas. As long as Purusha is entangled in the gunas, it is called a jiva, a limited form of the consciousness. By the sad imposition of limitation, which in Advaita Vedanta we would call upadhi, Upadhi literally means limitation. By the consequence of that limitation, this Purusha then, through attachment to the gunas, experiences all these dualistic things. Okay, when that Purusha gets beyond the gunas, it becomes guna atita, then it no longer has any of these attachments and experiences. And that is the state of the Kshetrajna. Right? So remember in Yoga Sutra, so this, what I'm trying to provide you is a synthesis of Yoga Sutra based in Sankhya philosophy, Purusha Prakriti, Advaita Vedanta, everything in one capsule. They are different, seemingly different conceptions, useful conceptions to reach the same. See, when you go to a building, sometimes there is a front staircase and a back staircase, right? Both staircases lead to the same top floor, right? But in every building we have service entrance and main entrance. Okay, you can get to both, right? Or you can take elevator, it will take you to the top floor. Stairs will also take you to the top floor. The nature of the stairs is going to be different, right? When you go into the elevator, somebody has to tell you, sir, you must wait for the doors to open. Suppose somebody doesn't know how to take the elevator. Wait for the doors to open, step inside, press the button, you'll go up. Okay. If you tell the stairs, you have to say, no, sir, you have to put one foot on top of the other, hold on to the banister and climb up. So the instructions are different, right? So if you take Yoga Sutra approach and you follow the basis of Sankhya philosophy, you have to accept the concept of Purusha and Prakriti, which is very useful, right? When the ultimate experience is had, it will become very clear that these are all, one is a lift, one is a staircase, but the point they are reaching is the same. Is that making sense? Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that's all.
I mixed up.
Huh? What is that?
Mixed up. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and these are definitely useful for the mind to be trained, is to learn and read and absorb these concepts intellectually first, very deeply, and then with practice. And then when the flash of insight comes, then it becomes like very, very crystal clear, right? Beyond even the state of learning. That is then the realm of intuition combined with learning and experience. And that is most delightful, of course. So now, we said human beings. So human beings, we say there are jivas. Jivas are forms of Purusha entangled in Prakriti. Correct? Okay. As long as this limited form of Purusha is entangled, it undergoes samsara, the transmigration. Unless one subscribes to the Christian faith, in which case eternal damnation after death. But there is some value to that also. We can discuss that too. So here's an interesting question. Suppose you're standing at a place and I give you a choice, two choices. What is the benefit and damage of both choices worth examining? Suppose I tell you, okay, here's your life. You've been given a life, right? Okay, at some point you're going to drop the body. We call it death. You don't know what happens after death. I give you two choices. One choice, either you believe in one entity, you go to heaven, otherwise eternal damnation. Other choice, whatever happens, there will be another chance. Reincarnation, repeat what, like we say in the shampoo ad, lather, rinse, repeat. Okay. What are the advantages and disadvantages of both beliefs? Tell me. Is there any advantage to either belief or disadvantage to either belief?
Unless we practice, I don't know. I mean, if you can.
Oh, why? I'll tell you a simple one. Suppose I tell you this after this life, if you blow it, it's eternal damnation. Won't it light a fire under your rear?
Yeah.
Think about it. You will. If I tell you this exam, you don't pass this exam, you fail it, you're finished. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is, suppose you're a weak student. Anyway, I'm going to fail the exam. What is the point of trying? Failure to hona hi hai. Chodo. That's what has happened to a lot of Christians. This is too tough. Failure to hona hi hai. तो ठीक है, mortal sin बोल दो, mortal sin कर देंगे, कोई नहीं. Eternal damnation, no problem. So people, there's plus and minus. If you're motivated, it will really light a fire in your rear. This is it. Okay. Okay, what is the other side? You take wash, rinse, repeat, reincarnation. जितनी बार बारी और एक बार बैटिंग करना है फिर से आ जाओ. Another innings will also happen. What is the advantage? Advantage is you may be prepared for a long haul marathon. ठीक है, I will do it. I will not get depressed. What is the disadvantage? अरे कोई नहीं, फिर से और एक भी मिलेगा क्या? Why should I exert now? अगले जन्म में देख लेंगे. I've actually heard people tell me this. So you see, there are advantages and disadvantages to both viewpoints, not just one viewpoint. Hindu viewpoint also has great disadvantage. If you're a lazy mind, you will say, "Arey kya? Aur agli baar kar lenge kya? Why should I exert myself now?" God will always give me another chance, right? So what is important from this? In our thing also, that's why Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya says in Viveka Chudamani, first verse, he says, what is it? Jantunam Narajanma Durlabha Mataha. Of all beings, first of all, getting this human birth is a great difficulty. 80 crore births you took and you came here. And on top of that, to be born in Brahmin family, that too Vipra well learned, is even harder. After that, if you're going to blow it, he says, nothing but a big thwack is needed. Only an idiot will blow it at this stage. So, in our thing also, just because there are infinite chances doesn't mean that it says, okay, take the next chance. Right? But for that, we have to truly understand why this duality is so painful. Bhagavan Sri Ramana says that engaging in this world is like departing from Brahman, as Mahesh was pointing out first, using the word beautifully, Brahman. For the mind to depart from Brahman, he says, is like running out in the hot sun. Why would you want to do that when you have the shade and cool of Brahman, right? So our great saints and sages, after great meditation, have pointed out that the experiences of the world, although seemingly attractive and pleasurable, are like running in the hot sun when there is a cool and shaded tree to sit under, right? In many ways, that blazing sun of samsara, or in many different analogies, a fire, it has been compared. But the nature of the mind, once it has got engrossed in the senses in the body, is it doesn't remember it permanently. So we get engrossed and embroiled in all kinds of speculations, expectations, and disappointments, right? And that cycle goes on. But nevertheless, because of the grace of these great sayings and gurus, they remind us, right? A very helpful and friendly tap on the shoulder. Okay, wake up. So anyway, so human beings, this is a state, slight digression. What we take any other kind of, so many things have living sentience, right? Even plants have sentience, you know that, right? Okay. In plants also consciousness flows, right? So, so those will be considered as unmoving, but still sentient, right? Trees have such a tremendous network of communicating. They help each other. Do you know that? When trees are in a forest, they can even send nutrients to each other. More helpful than human beings sometimes. Okay. When a tree is dying, it can get nutrients from its neighboring trees. Right? There is a tremendous amount of life and intelligence in trees. Right? Everything, lichen, this is a coral. Coral is a living thing. You know that, right? After we pluck it, it looks dead and they keep it in beautiful things. But It's a living thing, right? So again, but not moving, right? So anyway, these kind of all these sentient things. So even in that coral, there is a trace of Purusha embroiled in Prakriti, right? That's what Bhagavan is saying. Whatever is born and has sentience, right? Now, the way we compare in a beautiful painting, sometimes you go see a painting, there are some colors in something, some things are not colored. So similarly, what we think as non-sentient is the uncolored parts of the painting. They are also part of Brahman. Okay, they will also get recycled in different forms and sentience will enter into them. Okay, look at what is here, some chemical composition, right? We are in Star Trek, we are called carbon life forms. Remember that? I don't know if you remember, we grew up on the Star Trek stuff. So we're called carbon life forms. These are silicon life forms, what we're talking through, right? Silicon based. We are carbon life forms. So it's only carbon, hydrogen. Finally, when we take the skin and the chemicals inside and we break it down, they are all elements in the periodic table, right? So I can dissect a human being and put them into so much percent of pieces from the periodic table, right? Now, after the pranas leave this body, this one, it will get recycled, right? It will go back into earth. It will become carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen. It will recombine. The organic matter will decay by the act of heat and other things, right? And slowly it will decay. It will go back into the elements. And then it will be, something will eat it, right? Or it may go as nutrients for some plants, right? Correct? Then those plants will grow and give corn and seed and things like that, right? Correct? By the action of rain and sun. And then that will be eaten by something. Correct? So you see that he is right. Right? In a sense, the what we think of as sentient and insentient, right? This distinction is not permanent. You know, that's why in our great Puranas, they would even talk to mountains. Why else would Hanuman go and talk to Mainaka? You know what I'm saying? Right? So there are two approaches. One is I can remove all sentience from the physical world, right? Or I can imbue everything with sentience, right? What do you say? But in the end, life experience can only be had if there is sentience, right? So Bhagavan is saying, whatever is born, yavat sanjayate, kinchit, which is sentient, whether it is moving or unmoving, kshetra kshetraya. So when we ascend to the point where we can see the sentience in Ganga, don't we worship rivers in India? Why? They are transformations, right? Am I not correct in saying this? Don't we worship everything in India, right? So we can either take this to be superstitious or we can take it to be very wise, right? That there may be a deep wisdom that is animating these people who understood that it is just consciousness itself playing in different ways, right? And many of our great yogis and jnanis have said this entire thing is play of consciousness. If you read, I think Muktananda has a book like that, Play of Consciousness. Right? So just coming in different forms again and again. Anyway, that was the long explanation to a short question. Okay. But it's interesting, right? Whatever. So, Bharatarshava. Shall we move on to 27? Any other questions or comments? Feel reasonable to move forward? Okay. 27.
समं सर्वेषु भूतेषु तिष्ठन्तं परमेश्वरं विनश्यत्स्व विनश्यन्तं यः पश्यति स पश्यति.
What a beautiful lead-in. Now you see the entire long digression I gave you in the previous verse is leading up to this. Yes or no? Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram. He alone perceives who sees him, Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, dwelling alike in all beings and not perishing when they perish. Right? So the state of seeing Bhagavan in everything is such a high state. Yah pashyati sa pashyati. This is beautifully said in so many of our verses. He who sees, sees. This is sight. This is true vision. Right? Very hard, of course, to achieve. But this is seeing. He alone perceives. Alike, without distinction of any kind, dwelling where? In all beings. Samam iti. Samam nirvishesham. Now we call it samyak darshana. Same thing in yoga. Samam iti. Samam nirvishesham. Without distinction. Tishtantam. Sthitim kurvantam. Kva. Dwelling where? In all beings. Sarveshu samasteshu bhuteshu. All living beings extending from Brahma to things stationary. Brahmadi sthavaranteshu pranishu. Come, whom? Parameshwaram, the Supreme Lord. Dehendriya manobuddhya avyaktatmanaha. In relation to body, senses, mind, intellect, the unmanifest and the individual self. Apeksha. Paramascha asau ishvarasya ishana shilascha iti. He who rules is the Supreme and the Lord. He dwells alike in all beings who are characterized as perishing. Parameshwaraha. Tam sarveshu bhuteshu samam tishtantam. Tani vishinashti vinashyatsu iti. Tam cha parameshwaram avinashyantam iti. Bhutanam parameshwarasya cha atyanta vailakshanya padarshanartham. Katham. Whence this difference? Sarvesham hi bhava vikaranam janilakshana bhava vikaro moolam. The root of all transformation to which beings are subject is birth. Remember, there are Shad Vikaras, right? 6 transformations. First one is birth. Other transformations follow from it. The last transformation is destruction. Nothing remains after it to suffer further transformations. Right? Vinashat paraha na kaschit asti. Bhava vikaraha bhava abhavat. Attributes presuppose substance. Satihi dharmini dharmaha bhavanti. Ataha antya abhava vikara abhava anuvadena tat purva bhavinaha sarve bhava vikaraha pratishiddaha bhavanti saha tat karyaihi. Therefore, by affirming the absence of the last transformation, all prior transformations and their consequences have been repudiated. Thus follow the total otherness of the Supreme Lord as against all contingent beings. Since he does not perish, meaning that, so the point is we have all these transformations, 6 transformations, starting with birth, blah, 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 blah. Lord is imperishable. He is not subject to the last transformation. So all the preceding transformations don't apply to him either. So he is beyond transformation. Right? So a beautiful proof by our own Guru, Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya. Tasmat sarvabhutaihi vailakshanyam atyantam eva parameshwarasya siddham. Thus follow the total otherness, etc. He only sees who perceives the Supreme Lord as set forth. Yaha evam yathoktam parameshwaram pashyati sa pashyati. And then there is objection, etc. So anyway, what would you, let me see if you have any objections. Pranav, maybe you're on mute.
No, sir, I'm just practicing my shloka.
Oh, I see. Any questions? comments, discussion?
Lord Shankar, I have this question. I mean, in general, that because it is quite often that you talk about death, sometimes even without context. I mean, is this the reason that if we understand what the final transformation is all about, then we'll see, then we'll do away with the other ones also.
First of all, let me confirm with everybody. Do I talk about death without context? Let's take a vote, Shalab.
You find the context somehow everywhere.
Okay. Pranav is more gentle and generous. It's true. It's true. It's true. So you were saying, yes. No, it is the ultimate mystery, right? Is it not? Okay. So, Are Bhaiya, even in, what is that, our Kathopanishad, our little boy Nachiketas goes to Yama and asks him. He says, what the biggest mystery is this: men are born like corn and they die all the time. Where do they go after that? Right? Is this not? Flung into this earth, we look around us. कोई सोचेगा तो पहले यही तो question है. Very important question, right? Observationally, Nachiketas कितना smart boy है, few years old. वो देख रहा है 8 years का करीब, whatever, young fellow. तो he asks a very simple question कि where does everybody go? And after all, reverse करो तो why do we do anything? Life में अगर हमें पता नहीं end में क्या आने वाला है, what is the purpose of doing things now? I mean, yes, like, we saw those hamsters in a wheel. They put a hamster into the wheel, it runs, right? We can run like that. Definitely. Your boss tells you, hey, kaam karo. You can do, right? Your wife tells you, go get the groceries. You can do. You should do. That one may be hard to read. Your kid says, Dad, do this for me. Okay, you can do. Your parents say, do this. You do, right? So you're a good little monkey. You run on the hamster on the wheel day after day, happily. Very good. Okay, one day, suddenly it's going to all come crashing down. And you're going to ask yourself, why did I do all this? Okay, of course, that day will come at the point of the jiva leaving the body. It will definitely come there. So the wise fellows, like Nachiketa said, let me answer this when I'm 8 years old, before I start doing all this monkey business. Right? So then if you can do the monkey business, knowing why you're doing it at least, right? Your monkey business will be a little more aligned with the Lord's will, right? And when the time comes to depart, you will not then have these unpleasant questions at the wrong time, right? Yes or no? Right. Second thing, death is a simple one-point thing to talk about. Life is variegated. There are so many varieties in life. मैं क्या बोलूँगा फिर? It will not make any sense. Death is a focal point. Everybody reaches it, and then after that, nobody knows what is there beyond. So it is the ultimate mystery. And indeed, you're right. But you hit upon another very good point. It's not just talking death for the sake of death, but indeed, because the imperishable one does not suffer that transformation. Correct? You hit upon a very good point. The imperishable one does not suffer that transformation, right? We observe that all human beings do, right? So therefore, knowing what lies beyond that portal is where the imperishable sits. See, at the time of death, what's going to happen to all of us? I can tell you this. It's said in the Chandogya Upanishad also, okay? But you can also experience it. You can voluntarily withdraw your mind and pranas from your body. It's a yogic practice. Okay? And if you're as accomplished as Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya, you can also enter another body. That is called Parakaya Pravesha. Okay. When that person yogically practices and does this, then there is no fear of death. It is like, as Swami Ram says, the guy comes out of the castle and goes back into the back door. Okay. So let's say you ride a bicycle. First time you ride a bicycle, you are terrorized that you cannot balance on it. Yes or no?
Right.
Then once you master the balance, now you all drive a car probably. Do you really think every time, oh my God, I have to drive? It's automatic, right? Right. So to the supreme yogis, entering and leaving the body is child's play. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? The rest of the world is fascinated and afraid of that transformation because it lies in the unknown. Right? But the true self lies beyond that only. Right?
Right.
So that is why the constant reference and bringing back. And you hit a good point. This is precisely the reason. Right? If it was anything else, then why obsess about it? It's not a morbid obsession. Right? And I remember I told you this other point also. You can enjoy the art of living only if you know the science of dying. Right? So then also confers what is called fearlessness, abhaya. Because greatest fear is only that, all said and done. You know. And I'm very glad you brought it up. Because recently, I was talking to a friend. And this topic came up again because somebody passed away whom we both know. And then, he was talking about grief. And I said, think about it. I mean, forget if some people don't like religion, they don't like philosophy, they don't have faith in all these things. Even they may come to a class or 2 or 10, they don't like all. In their heart, they have not opened up to the incontrovertible validity of the God's word. It's difficult for some people to accept. So I said, okay, fine. Let's say you can't accept it. I said, logically, it makes no sense to grieve for the dead. Think about it. How can you grieve for somebody whom you don't know what happened to them after that? What if they are having a fantastic time and you're the idiot stuck in the mines, salt mines, grinding away? You don't know. So if you don't know, how should you grieve? Moorkh hai kya? I mean, people don't exercise this big cauliflower put between the ears by God. Either you apply logic or you listen to the word of the God. You won't do both, but then, boo, somebody died. What is this? It make any sense? I know 5-year-old girls who are stronger than that. So, what does Bhagavan say? Anaryam, when he sees. Plaibhyam masma gama partha naitatva yupapadhyate. Stand up, have a spine. What does Vivekananda say? Arise, awake. The Upanishads scream of strength. How can you be so weak? First of all, you won't believe in the Lord's word. 2, you won't apply logic. And then, oh, I am so sad, so blue. You shouldn't be sad. You're an idiot. You've not applied your logic. You don't know what has happened to that person. If you apply logic, then don't grieve. Why should you grieve? Are you a fool? Huh? Or take the Lord's word, at least have that wisdom. And then there is so much beauty in the Bhagavad Gita. Listen to it, adopt it, and your life will be transformed, will it not? The choice is very simple, right? So that is what Bhagavan is saying. He says, don't worry about all this. Here is the truth, right? So to me, yeah, this seems very clear. Hopefully it is to everyone. Next verse, 29.
प्रकृतैव च कर्माणि क्रियमाणानि सर्वशः यः पश्यति तथात्मानं मकर्तारं स पश्यति.
Very good, very good, very good. This is very similar to an earlier verse. Prakritehe kriyamānāni gunaihi karmāni sarvashah ahankara vimūಢātma karta ahamiti manyate. Correct? Remember that? Prakritehe kriyamānāni. All the kriyamana, those that have to be done. Kriyamānāni karma.
Sir, I think we missed it. 28 or
Wait, yes. Yeah. Need to
Oh,
go
sorry, he skipped.
yeah, sorry. I'm going through 28.
Okay.
Sampasyan hi sarvatra samavasthitamishwaram nahi nastatat manatmanam tathoyati param gatim.
So this is very beautiful. You see, samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam Ishwaram. Na hinasti atmana atmanam tato yati paramati. This is beautiful advice for a Kshatriya, particularly. Right? Why Kshatriya? Because na hinasti. Right? By beholding alike the Lord dwelling in everywhere, one injures not the self by the self, the big self by the little self. Thus one reaches the highest goal. So, for beholding alike, that is cognizing everywhere in all beings, the Lord dwelling equally, the Lord described in verse 27. What does the beholder do? He injures not the big self by the little self. Thus, by this abstention from injuring. So, na hinasti, himsam na karoti atmana svenaiva swam atmanam. Right? Thus, by this abstention from injuring, he reaches the highest goal called liberation. Tataha tad ahimsanat yati param prakrishtam gatim mokshakhyam. Nanu naiva kaschit prani swayam swam atmanam hinasti. Objection. Surely no man injures himself. This resembles the statement in the Taittiriya Samhita. Neither on earth, nor in the sky, nor in the firmament should a fire be built. Katham uchate apraptam na hinasti iti. यथा न पृथिव्यां न अंतरिक्षे न दिव्य अग्निश्चेतव्यः इत्यादि. Reply, there is no flaw, for the ignorant may very well repudiate the self. This is the whole point. Right? This is a very important point. न एष दोषः अज्ञानाम् आत्मतिरस्करणोपपत्तेः. देखो, denying the self is the same as denying the Lord. Right? But in today's modern world, we cannot say that. Atheism has to be also allowed. And we have to say nice things to people like that. Right? But that is the point. Asuryan amatan lokan. People, so many people born as Hindus will not accept the word of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. They do not. Right? Right? But to denigrate or to not accept the word of the Lord is the same as denying the self, denying the Atma. Asurya namatan lokan andhena tamasa vritaha. Sunless worlds are inhabited by the blind ones, encircled by darkness. Right? Such is the state of one who denies the self. And in the practical world, the one who denies the self denies the Lord. In the world of duality, faith in the self is expressed as faith in the Lord. There are unfortunately two separate classifications. There are some who absolutely deny the Lord. Then some others, there is another flavor in which they have faith in the self, but they believe there is no Lord, yet they cannot stand bhakti, right? This is another form of it. Okay. Different flavors of blindness. One flavor is complete denial of the Lord. Another one is I believe in Advaita Vedanta. I will not do any worship or anything like that. That's so ridiculous. That is highly superstitious, right? Or I will come for about 10 or 12 of these, but then, I really don't think that, I don't really have true belief. All of it, there's so much stuff in this, some of it is really, doesn't seem appealing. Okay. This is the injuring oneself, right? Damaging oneself. So, but by beholding alike the Lord dwelling everywhere, one injures not the self by self, thus one reaches the highest good. Okay. So, Bhagavan says, resort to the non-self as a self-prof. Indeed, all ignorant people repudiate this most explicit and immediate self with a big S. यह तो इतरः यत् उक्त आत्मदर्शी सह उभयथा अपि. The perceiver of the real self does not injure the self by the self, does not destroy it. So, prior to that, Atmaha Sarvaha Ajnaha. So, indeed, all ignorant people repudiate this most explicit and immediate self, resort to the non-self as a self proper, go on repeatedly choosing and rejecting selves. How much of that happens? So many identities, right? And act righteously and unrighteously. That section, dharma adharmau kritva. Thus the self gets hurt. Atmanam hatva. Thus all ignorant people are self-destroyers. So he says, Atmaha sarvaha ajnaha. As regards the metaphysical self, even that always gets hurt, as it were, so the non-knowers of the self are self-destroyers. Iti sarve atmanaha eva avidvamsaha. Opposed to these, the perceiver of the true self, yahatu itaraha yat ukta atmadarshi, perceiver of the real self, as explained, what does not injure the self by self in any way, does not destroy it. Thus he achieves the highest goal, the fruit of spiritual life accrues to him. Tata yati param gatim yathoktam phalam tasya bhavati ityartaha. It was affirmed that seeing alike the Lord dwelling in all beings, one does not injure the self by the self. Some characterize this as unreasonable regarding the selves, which are inherently different in themselves due to their varying qualities and actions. In reply, it is stated as follows. Then you already read 29. Prakrityaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvashaha. Yah pashyati tatha atmanam akartaram sa pashyati. So, this connection to the earlier verse which I mentioned, Prakritehi kriyamanani gunehi karmani sarvashaha, very similar. Prakritehi kriyamanani gunehi karmani sarvashaha. How does that end?
Ahankara
Vimudhatma, karta ahamitma. Right. Ahankara vimudhatma. I am doing, thus deluded one. Karta aham, I am the doer. Thinks so, right? And this is the flip side of it. So what is the flip side? He alone sees. Yah pashyati. How does he do that? Because he says, Atmanam akartaram. He sees the self as a non-agent. All actions solely performed by Prakriti. So very similar, but Shvetasvatara Upanishad 4:10 teaches, Mayam tu Prakritim Vidyat. No Maya to be Prakriti. By that Prakriti solely that has transformed itself into effects and instruments such as Mahata, the activities of speech, mind, and body performed on all sides, in all manner of ways. He who sees this, and also that the self or the field knower, the Kshetrajna, devoid of adjuncts, sa tatha atmanam kshetragyam akartaram sarva upadi vivarjitam. Again, Bhagavan has used the word upadi just in the same sense that I said before. Sapashyati. He alone sees the supreme truth. This is the idea. Saha paramarthadarshi iti abhiprayah. Nirgunasya akartuhu nirvisheshasya akashasya iva bhede pramana anupapattihi ityarthaha. An entity devoid of attributes like space is a non-agent. It cannot be proved to have differences. Right? Action is only possible if there is duality. If there is no duality, how can one act on oneself, and with what? Right? So this is the very expansive view, right? It explodes the mind, doesn't it? It is forcing your mind to expand so much to encompass all of creation from beginning to end without beyond time, right? Yes or no? Now, here is a simple thing. Let's take a small day-to-day experience, right? So we go through life. I told you all to turn your videos on, that's why. You look at somebody, you smile, right? There's a recognition. There's a recognition of some, what is it of? Of some unity, some identity, right? Yes or no? Why do we smile when we see somebody, right? Why do we smile when we see a stranger? We don't even know them, right? It is some recognition of commonality, correct? Right? Something in common we have. What is, at least we have this much in common. We are inhabiting the same space-time at that instant. That much we have in common. That's why we smile. We are inhabiting the same space-time at the same instant. Isn't that nice? We are on the same sidewalk at the same instant. So we smile. Okay, very good. Now imagine that you have this commonality, you start to expand it. Right? Okay. So then you say, okay, we are all living in the same state at the same time. That's pretty nice. We are all living in the same country at the same time. That's pretty special. We are all living in the same earth at the same time. That is pretty special, isn't it? Right? Then you expand this beyond species. Now you think, oh, this poor rabbit, it's also living in the same world at the same time. Now this bird also is living in the same world at the same time. So you feed the birds. So you feed the rabbits. So you don't go around killing animals without having any need to eat them, right? Because the world, earth is giving us the bounty enough to eat without doing that, right? Now you see how all our behaviors of Sanatana Dharmis follow from this, right? So it's an expansion. And when that expansion happens, the heart gets gladdened, yes or no? You can feel it inside. You can feel the heart literally opens, right? And when that heart opens biochemically, we actually improve our health. We improve our longevity. So connection and love is the most physical manifestation of this super consciousness, right? Very hard to continue in day-to-day life, right? At all times, undoubtedly, right? But when we even see a glimpse of it, it tells us that what Bhagavan is saying is not false, right? There is a deep truth to this. And many modern psychologists and self-help people are rediscovering this in more practical ways, with a more practical thing of how can I live happier and longer, right? That's fine. but beyond that itself has been said in the Gita. Okay, very good. Any questions on this beautiful verse? Prakriti cha karmani kriyamanani sarvasha. And then we have a few more verses, which we'll finish next time, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. And then we will move to the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, next one, I think, Chaturtha Adhyaya. So, Kshetra Kshetrajya, we're almost at the end. Did you enjoy it? Huh? Bhagavan's word is always thrilling and beautiful. And once you develop a taste for it, right, it is developing a taste, right? Truly, if you think about it, right? And once you develop a taste and you keep listening to it, the beauty of this is it entrances you, but it also uplifts you. It's a good addiction to have. So I encourage you to amplify the delight that you find in it. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your weekend. Bhagavan's words are always nectarine, nectar-like, and uplifting for us. Particularly in the Gita, it's most easy to access. So have a lovely evening, and we will meet again next weekend and conclude chapter 13, and then see what chapter 14 has. More delights await us. Okay. That's right. Namaste, of course. Yeah. So I'll say Shanti Mantra. Om Tachamyora Vranimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyaham Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.